Hey, everybody. So happy Monday. So, today we're going to talk about education system, what's missing from your education. Because I'm in the midst of witnessing my kids in cyber schools. And let me tell you, education is really overrated. I'm truly concerned whether they're learning anything or not. But I do remember going through high school, college, grad school, and as an Asian American, I come from a background and culture where education is highly valued. But today, I really do find myself wondering if I were to do it over again, would I take the same route? Because the expense, the experience, and the usability, I don't know. Okay. Because we are seeing the education system just collapsing right now, and bless our teachers, they're doing an amazing job. But my son is struggling, seated all day looking into this screen, and it's just anything for him to stay focused, let alone, like, I don't think that they're speaking up because they don't want to be called out, and it doesn't feel like they're really present with the teachers, I guess. So I find that the teachers are really struggling to keep them engaged. Having said that, I feel that education did provide me with maybe a false sense of security and confidence that I didn't necessarily have to begin with. And so, as an immigrant, 1.5 generation Korean American to be specific, my start to the American dream life was far cry from the dream life it was supposed to be. It was riddled with anxiety and fear of really not fitting in. I remember trying to pretend like I can speak the language, but really I didn't understand a lot of it. So there was just a lot of guess, but I really feared not fitting in because I was almost a teenager. I was a girl in a new country. Can you imagine? I was 11 to be exact. And I was just at the brink of going into middle school. And that was just everything. I just remember all the confusion. So I understood very little about the ways of the world, and I quickly found myself doing anything that I can to just pretend like I'm fitting in. Standing out was the last thing you want to do. In fact, as an Asian woman, it was not encouraged in my household either. They wanted me to be docile and very, obedient. But I was never that way. And so I just really remember as a kid being really confused about who I was. And you're just supposed to look down, work hard, and get the grades to get in higher education. And it was the trap I bought into for a very long time, as if the license, the degree, certification was what I needed to validate my place in the world. But in retrospect, it was what I needed to be able to break the rules and really understand everything in its totality, right? You guys all know I studied psychology, nutrition, physical therapy, and then functional medicine, yoga. And I still don't stop right now. I'm heavily into transformational psychology, neurolinguistic programming, quantum physics attracts me, energy medicine, traditional Chinese medicine, and all that yoga has to offer. There's so many different facets to yoga, just the whole mindfulness, cosmic sciences, right? Physics, all of these things really blows my mind, but I love it when I'm able to pull the pieces together to make sense of the whole. But here's the thing is we fit into this cosmic world, and it's the ecosystem that we are creating. And I just want to kind of define education for what it's worth and kind of define that in a way that you guys might think about it differently. Because as you know, recently I just created the most amazing logo for our functional yoga medicine. It's going to be the movement that we really need in our world to pull all the different disciplines together in a cohesive manner to where we can create the best practitioners and best education ever is why I'm talking about education in the context of how can we make this a lot more user friendly and applicable and practical, right? But as I witness my sons going through the education system today, I'm having real conversations with my older son, who is super smart, overachiever, typical Asian kid who wants to get into the school of his choice. And he doesn't know shame. And I think he wants to fit in too. And being the older one, he's always strive to do the best as he can. And as many of you know, my sentiments with the various educational system, I believe there's a better way to get educated, and it requires you to think outside the box. And I don't want my son to be indoctrinated the way I was, because I almost feel like it took me just as long to start to learn to think outside the box. Not sure if I would have had the courage to speak up like I'm doing or starting to do more of now, had I not had the education backing to prove that I've been through the process. And I think that validates me a little bit more. But that's, I'll leave that up to you guys to decide. But I do value education, and my for my older son, I would like him to go to college at the very minimum and perhaps even pursue higher level education, but not because I said so, but because school teaches you structure, it teaches you discipline, and it teaches you work ethics and various ideologies that you wouldn't otherwise get exposed to. I still remember different professors in different classes, and I still hang on to their various different outlooks. And to have that kind of an exposure at a young age, that was everything to me. And I'm not sure if I want to rob my son of that, even though there's so much other options besides going to school. Like many of the successful late Steve Jobs, and even Zuckerberg with Facebook, they dropped out of college, but they got into college to begin with, right? And I think they're the minor few, but a lot of kids these days really need that structure and that work ethic and the discipline that school teaches you. And so, for social aspects as well. So, I believe in higher education, that experience is invaluable. Even with the internet boom, my higher education provided me with the resourcefulness, right? It taught me to be resourceful, ask elevated questions, to connect the dots better. Had I not had all these different disciplines to pull together, I don't know if I would be able to pull or connect the dots together, right? I have to say that when I learn from someone, I want to know that the person I learn from also knows more than me in the field of the study that I'm pursuing. So, in that way, the education is super important. Having been through the education system allows me to think more strategically too about how, what, why, and when I learn and apply the knowledge. But school doesn't really teach you to be resourceful. It doesn't teach you or encourage you to think outside the box and to think on your own terms. It really doesn't do that. It indoctrinates you in certain disciplines, whatever that study of choice might be. And that is what's missing in the school system or just about any education system, even professional ones. It kind of locks you in. I feel as though it's heavily linear. It doesn't expand their outlook or allows their students to think outside the box. But that's what sort of needs to be encouraged for our kids today with respect to education, I strongly feel. And every discipline or teaching that I've partaken in my years of education taught me to stay in my lane, in my scope of practice, put my head down and just drink the Kool-Aid, right? And that's what we were taught and required me to buy into the dogma, right? But every time I try and immerse myself, I found something that was lacking. It was only then I would go to another discipline or another discipline because it lacked the bigger, broader perspective. And the way I think is the big picture, bigger vision. I'm like, have this really imagination mind and I have a lot of questions. And if that discipline doesn't satisfy all of it, you bet I'm looking for answers in another discipline. But it's unique, the perspective that I have. Because I'm able to kind of see different angles and I'm able to really pull it all together in a way that I feel like I'm getting pretty close to really understanding the big picture. Looking around us today, nothing is stable, nothing is dependable, or is it reliable as the end all be all approach to anything, right? It is in recognizing such limits that we must look with within ourselves to elevate the way we practice our given profession, no matter what that might look like, and start to get empowered to think on your own 2 feet. And I believe we have to start the movement to teach our students or our kids to do the same. Constantly having conversations with my sons about it. And I used to think, education was overrated, but having had lots of employees in my day and really learning from them and having a lot of them not have that education and having them have too much education is sort of like there's a happy middle. But the best thing is the education really does set them apart in putting forth the discipline and the hard work, the work ethics. It's really correlated. And of course, I've seen it without the education as well. There's hard ethics that are learned in our family values as well. But if we're really being honest about the educational system, I think those of you who do have kids, you do want your kids to go to college at the very minimum, because now that's the standard, that's the minimum standard. And I think that that's super important. And I just want to let you guys know, as functional yoga medicine, the mastery and foundations level teachings and its comprehensive curriculum is fully coming together. And we've got students all over the world interested in the program now. We're going to be committed to doing things that are going to make impact, that's going to dare to make a difference and really bridge the gap where there is a severe gap between sick care and healthcare. And I've always said that that's what I needed. And that's what I needed as a patient. That's what I needed as a client. That's what I needed as a yoga teacher, as well as a yoga student and a physical therapist and dietitian and everything else in between, even functional medicine practitioner. So pulling it all together and really filling the gap and really creating something that we need, but that's going to take outside of the box approach, not this linear disciplined what do you call it, disciplines that I studied, but pulling all things together. And so that's the benefit, I believe, is the educational system. For those of you who are cyber schooling, and I think it's really important to encourage our kids to go move and make sure this is a prime time for us to really teach them the healthy ways of nutrition, to start to think, because I'm teaching my kids to come down for their lunch. I have the prep work. We go grocery shopping on the weekends. We meal plan together, and they decide exactly what they're going to eat. And they kind of put the foods together, and we're constantly talking about why it's super beneficial. My older son's going to the gym all the time. He's running cross country. So he sees the value in macronutrients to micronutrients, and he's putting all the healthy stuff. And they're learning the difference between the home cooked meal and how healthy that is, as opposed to the fast food fix or school lunches that they used to get. So this is a prime time for us to really take the advantage to really teach them what we can, because there's a lot of teaching that goes on that is subconscious to us, right? It's in what they see you do as a parent, right? And so this is how I evaluate the education system. And I hope this was really insightful for you. Really think about the education system. And sometimes it is good to have that structure for our kids. And I do believe that higher education is always a good thing, provided that it doesn't break your bank and make sure it makes sense. But also, too, there needs to be a different type of education where we're able to pull everything together and get a broader perspective. And then really to teach our kids to think outside the box in terms of gaining that education that they need is something that I really want to emphasize in our trainings together, in our path. Coming together in as educators, as well as students, as well as clients, and everybody else in between. Thank you so much for your time, for joining me for this podcast. I hope you enjoyed it, and I would love your comments. And you can comment below in the Facebook feeds, YouTube feeds, as well as on my website on our blog. Thank you so much. I'll see you guys